Sweet. I'm not expecting you to make a presentation today, so you're off the hook.
Yeah, I've had enough of those the past couple months.
Yeah, you've been busy. So, I mean, I guess ultimately, um, I know you have and continue to do a million different things. So from, speaker to business owner, to family man slash professor. I mean, give us the whole backstory for your career in a short, however long you want to take synopsis. There's a lot to fill in there, but would love a little backstory if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in South Africa, and I grew up in a family of immigrants because we immigrated to America in the mid 80s.
Okay.
And main reason for that was just my mom, actually, she was born in Zimbabwe, and at 18, they had to flee to South Africa because of everything that was going on there. And then back in the 80s in South Africa, with apartheid going on, no one really knew what was going to happen. So my mom, after she got married to my dad, she's like, we just need to get out of here. And I need a better future for my children. So we came to Houston, Texas, of all places, which is a little crazy. But that's where we had family at the time. So that's where we ended up. So my family is actually in the diamond business. We've been in the diamond industry for 6 generations, which is pretty crazy. So my dad actually switched from wholesale to retail, online retail, as early as the late 90s. So he actually went online in 1998 or 99, selling diamonds. Pretty cool story, actually, where I think one of his first sales was a lawyer in Chicago. And the lawyer was like worried about buying like a $10,000 diamond in 1999. So he actually wrote up this whole legal contract for the purchase. And he ended up sending it to my dad. And then afterwards, my dad was like, cool. And the lawyer's like, yeah, you should use this with all your customers. So as you know, we're many years away from e-commerce transactions being with a legal contract, but it's cool to see like our beginnings. So I basically grew up. So I grew up like in e-com and things like that. I went to seminary to become a rabbi, but that was not what I wanted to do, for a living. But just because I'm an Orthodox Jew, it was important to have religion as sort of a foundation of my life. Once I got out of that, I had a couple mentors who, they similar path, and then they went to either business school or law school. So I decided to go get my MBA and pivot. And while I was doing my MBA, started focusing on marketing and analytics, had a really good internship at blinds.com, which was eventually bought out by Home Depot actually a couple of years ago. So, going to business school, getting an MBA, you'd think, your goal is like, I'm going to get a 6-figure salary when I get out of school. And, at some big corporation. And that unfortunately not happen to me. It was, it was still part of that 2008 kind of scenario, but it was meant to be. So when I left school, I ended up starting my own consultancy in digital marketing called Optidge. And that's kind of the rest is history from there. In between then and now, I ended up going to another web development company and built their digital marketing team up. But that lasted through about 2016. And then we kind of went our separate ways. And starting 2017 again, I fully went into Optidge. And the past 4 years have been really fun growing, the agency. And currently we have about a group of 10 employees. And it's pretty cool. So that's on the Optidge side. From a professor side and just a speaker side, being involved at the university doing my MBA there, I got really close to the head of the marketing department. And I've always really loved teaching. In a different world, I would have gotten a master's of education and become a principal at some school. But always wanted to teach, and I just love doing it. So goal was like, within the next 10 years, maybe I can go back to school and become a professor and teach. But it actually came a lot earlier. 2015, I got a random note from the head of the marketing department at Bauer, which is at the University of Houston. And he's like, hey, we really want to up the ante on our digital marketing education. We don't just want these theoretical professors coming along and teaching. We want guys who really know what they're doing to come in and actually teach. So I gladly accepted the invitation, and I've been doing it now for 5 years and teaching both SEO, Google Ads, and Facebook marketing, and with a extreme focus on project-based teaching. So every semester, while we're teaching, students are teamed up with a real company, and they're able to actually implement what they're learning. So it kind of gives them in like a semester, which is about 6 months, like a mini internship, so that when they do leave school, they literally can, they said that they've actually done these things already, and it's a lot easier for them to get a job.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, I have a million questions, but I remember the first time we chatted, and I'm an extreme tab open user, and thanks to the great suspender for keeping my computer from not crashing every 10 seconds. But I think that you beat me in the amount of tabs and toolbars that you had going on. So my inlay to that was, you've been doing this a long time, starting a business in 2010. Talk to me about what you've seen over the last 10-ish years from the business then to the business now that you're in, and feel free to pull in any sort of professor side, student side things that you've seen, but also just with clients and the technology of how you've seen that evolve for the last decade or so.
Sure. It's funny that you remember that, because that is like a a unique identifier for Danny Gavin,
Yeah.
other than number of tabs. But yeah, look, you know what I think? I'm going to take like a different kind of perspective to this question. I think the funny thing is that you'd think in 10 years people would grow and know, but it's amazing how many small businesses and even larger businesses out there have not reached the level yet of understanding that digital marketing is a huge part of business, or what is required. I mean, even the fact that you've got websites now that are still not mobile responsive. So it's fascinating to know that some of the basic things that we've learned and started off with 10 years ago still apply now. Obviously, there's new things, and things are evolving and things are changing. The way that a Google Ads platform looks now is very different than the way it looked 10 years ago. Even Facebook advertising. I saw an interesting discussion on LinkedIn recently where someone said, yeah, we've got 20 years of Facebook advertising experience. And like most people only started advertising Facebook in 2016. So obviously, they mean like they've got like 5 people who each have 5 years, but either way, I think, and even in Facebook itself, we've had some interesting ups and downs. Think about it. We had so much data when we were able to target people in amazing ways, and then suddenly Facebook took that away. And then we have to kind of figure things out. It reminds me of even like Google Analytics. We used to have keyword data available in Google Analytics and actually see the organic searches. So much has happened throughout the 10 years. But I think what it shines a light upon is that, in our industry, it is changing all the time. I mean, most industries change, but with us, it's literally changing week after week, month after month. So it's not for everyone. But for those who are, into change and excited about trying new things, there's plenty of that, and has been proven from the past 10 years. Did we cut off?
You did, but let's keep going.
Okay.
It's still recording, so we'll blame that on Google or the internet or something like that. You're on a good rant though about how the technology has changed itself, but the principles really haven't.
Did I cut off at all, Eric, or not?
A little bit, but that's okay. We can.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll get into it even more. So, I mean, really, it was a leading question into that. And one of the things, was both being from the agency side and empowering tools and technology to help us. Yet at the same time, the business foundation of what marketers are trying to do hasn't really changed over, the last, forever. We're still trying to generate leads. We're still trying to make cost-effective business decisions, all those great things. So have you seen that the tools that we use have helped us, or is it more of a distraction away from, some of the core business conversations that actually need to happen with clients? Because I think you sort of alluded to this at the start, the surprise of whether it's mobile optimization or they just don't have their organic, structure in place, et cetera. We have to weed out the noise. So maybe tell us a little bit about how you guys handle that at Optidge, some of the tools or processes that you have to weed through that noise and really get to helping your clients solve, business problems.
Yeah, I think tools are really important. I think they're an integral part of how we work. Um, I think it's hard to find the one tool that has everything. Specifically in the world of SEO, which is a large area that we focus on. We have many tools, right? There's some tools that provide better keyword research, other tools that provide better auditing for sites and see what are the technical issues. I think for site audits now, we use 3 or 4 tools because some have this, some have that. So I think the budget required for tools is kind of an interesting, thing that an agency has to deal with. But that's why I think you kind of have to learn through sort of a process of elimination and see, you're going to get different specialties from different tools, and you kind of have to see what works for you. And then usually you'll build your own sort of combination that makes something, really good. And then I think with regards to, translating that over to the client, I think in the end of the day, it's about bringing value, right? So if, fancy reports or different things like that, often we'll find that many clients will not even read it, right? And it's so hard because one of the largest, challenges that agencies have is reporting. And a lot of agencies put a lot of time into reporting. And even when you've got those automated reports, is that enough? Do we have to be more custom? So it's tough, but I think that's why you kind of have to be real. Like you got to go a little bit deeper than just, go figure out from the client what is important for them. Like, do they really need this whole report? Maybe they don't. Maybe maybe you've been focusing on 10 things that they don't even care about, and it's really about something else. So that having that real conversation, as much as sending out that monthly report or biweekly report, it's so important to have that conversation with the client so that you know what they need. This is kind of like an undercover agency secret, but part of the reason why agencies do reports is because it pushes them to make sure that they're reviewing everything, yep. Right? Because when you build that report, you're actually analyzing everything as well. So the question is, who's the report for? Is it for the agency or is it really for the client?
Yeah, I know it's a great point of conversation because I've felt for a very long time and always use the annoying sort of analogy, if you will. It's like bananas, right? It goes bad very quickly. And the moment you compile it and send it, you have to really technically update it that much, more quickly, or the day of or the day after. And it just seems like a crazy way to work. So I think that this notion of reporting, you're right, is probably more about the agent to be accountable to their time, to their output, and to their goals, and to show the value that ultimately clients are hiring the agencies in this case to do or perform. But we have to actually be accountable to the results and to exactly those hard conversations with clients to say, I'm going to give you access to this live data, and I'm going to make you accountable. Let's have that awkward conversation in the sense of what really do you need us to do and report on. But probably 9 times out of 10, if we were to say we could spend these 10 hours on performance versus these 10 hours on giving you data you're probably not looking at, they're going to be like, of course I'm going to take the 10 hours in performance. So that just sometimes just takes that to have that conversation. So I'm guessing you guys do that, but what else makes, Optidge special when you are promising or getting into the value conversation with clients? Maybe tell me a little bit more about that if you can.
Yeah, look, I think there's lots of agencies out there, and, the trick is how do you differentiate yourself? Which, lots of people say, I can do SEO, I do PPC, what's special about us? So the way I like to put us is, we're a smallish agency, right? We're not huge. So naturally we're able to, sometimes you have agencies which are really cut off. Like you have the project manager, you just have the SEO guy, you just have the PPC guy. I try to really focus on cross-functional teaching and learning. Like you might not be able to do PPC, but enough where you're involved. Having that open contact between everyone on the team, not just that like bottleneck, And I know that there's reasons how larger agencies grow and they're able to do things, but I feel like, the fact that we are small and we can do this, it just gives more access to the people who are doing the work. And they know what's going on. The right knows what the left is doing, the left knows what the right is doing. I think another advantage is the fact that personally me, being the founder and like chief strategist of the company, the fact that I am in school and teaching this is, I think, helps a lot also, because I have to be sort of up to date. It forces me, whether I want it or not, to constantly up to date, because when I get into the classroom, I want to make sure that my students are getting the best and the most up to date information as possible. So I don't know, when you put all those things together, it kind of creates this unique agency that can really help people.
And so we don't have to get into the whole, where's the world going conversation, but, talk to me about managing a team. You're the business owner, you're teaching, you're making yourself accountable to those hard and soft skills so that, you're the expert in the room. How is managing the team right now? And what are some of the things that you're doing to, enable for growth and success, through the next year, call it? And it'd be good for us to hear a little bit about where your mindset's at.
Sure. So I think before COVID, I was a big believer in being in the office. And not because what we do can't be done remotely, because it can be, but it just felt like it's nice to have the team together. We had an open office plan and like everyone could speak to each other. And it just I don't know, it just worked well. And it was sort of like having someone, distant wouldn't really work. So what was actually a pretty cool blessing in disguise was that one of my top employees, who I did not want to lose, she notified me in December that her husband was taking a job out in Montana. And right away it was like, like, Danny, I just want to let you know this, so on and so forth. And the first thing I said was like, hey, like, yeah. I'm not letting you go. You're going to keep working for us, and I'm going to get whatever I need to make sure that happens. And and at that point, like, I had to work through it, and I started speaking to people. Hey guys, like, I knew some people who had people who worked remotely, and I just wanted to understand, like, how can I make this successful? What are some of the things that I can do? I ended up buying actually an owl. I don't know if you've ever seen these owl cameras. They're pretty cool, but it's this 360 camera that you can stick in the middle of a conference table, and someone who's remote can feel like they're part of the meeting because it has a 360 picture of everyone around the table. So you can see everyone at the same time. And then whoever is speaking at that time, at the bottom, the camera automatically focuses on them. So you get to see everyone and then also people. So it might be something you check out, Eric, but it's a cool piece of equipment. But it was like, yeah, I'm going to invest in that. That way, even though she's so far away, but when we do have our meetings, it's as if she's right there, and part of the action. I actually took that camera to a client meeting that I was forced to go to a couple of weeks ago, just so that everyone could feel like they were there, which is pretty cool. So why am I getting to all this? So that kind of broke the barrier open of like, hey, this remote stuff, it's possible. And honestly, now a couple of months down the line, I'm loving it. I think it's fine. It's actually working really well. It opens up my mind also to being like, hey, my next employee, do they really have to be from Houston, Texas? Or can I now open my arms up to Toronto and find someone really great there and hire them? There's actually, I'm going to mention this because it's good, but there's actually a really cool, I think it is actually Canadian based. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're called Acadium, Acadium. They're this really awesome website where they connect college students and other people through internships and apprenticeships. So a company like mine would come along, buy a credit for $300, and that would give us access to a apprentice intern for 3 months, 10 hours a week. And really very cool concept. And yes, you could hire them after, but this really cool sort of marketplace where you can also give back to students, but also use them in a way that you can get them to help. Imagine, like, if I need help and find a high quality intern paying $300 American for 3 months, for 10 hours a week, that's a pretty good, good ROI there. So just these sort of things, these possibilities that you have kind of it's opened my eyes to seeing that you can run a successful business and do these sort of things. Now, this doesn't mean that, I mean, there are issues that come with it, right? I personally feel that there are certain of my employees that aren't as productive, and that's kind of a challenge. Still working through it. I don't have the answer yet, but you know, that's business. We have challenges all the
Have
time.
to adapt. Well, I think you bring up a good point. It's the office space won't go away necessarily, but if it can be that place of, togetherness and maybe more lunches or, communication strategy sessions or, team bonding or those kinds of things, which you really do need to do. But certain individuals may stay longer or earlier because that's how they perform. And I think the point you're making is that it really does bode well to the old way to work, to the new way to work, which is maybe I can empower someone to be the best person or human that they can be. And that's actually a really great way to think about it, not saying, well, I think it should be in the office 9 to 5 and this and that. And we're in such a creative industry, that as we employ more automation and tools and processes and all these kinds of things, hopefully what we're doing is freeing up people to be more creative, which means we need to ensure that they're in the most creative environment for them as an individual. So yeah, I think that's, poses the next evolution of that work environment. But it'll be interesting to see where the big companies take it, because ultimately they probably have rooms full, or at least virtual rooms full of people trying to figure this stuff out. So,
Exactly.
so I guess a little bit on then what's next for, for your business. Does it change how, or the services you're offering? Do you then look at being more full service? Do you stay niche? Like if you have more adaptability or options to employ different or unique skill sets, would you change the way you're operating and offer more things, or have you gone that route in the mindset yet?
You know, I think that, you know, from how we've done business, I've really opened up. Like my point is, you know, a lot of people say like, which industry do you focus on, or what service do you offer? And I'm kind of like agnostic, right? For now we work with, you know, any industry who needs help,
Great.
anyone who, you know, and what service? Like, you know, do I build websites? Yeah. Have I built some really cool Shopify e-commerce sites and some really good WordPress sites? Yeah, definitely. Now, am I a web design company? No, but if that's something my client needs, then we'll take care of it. So, you know, that for us as a company, that hasn't really changed much. Like that's something that I've kind of built in as the foundation of what I, you know, have done specifically in the past 4 years. But yeah, but the point is, yeah, I mean, the fact that there's less barriers and there's less borders,
Yeah.
I think that will just allow us to do it even more. You know, in the end, but it's also important to note, like, it is important to also know what you're really good at and make sure you double down on that. Because if you do spread yourself out too thin, that could cause issues.
Yeah, we always asked ourselves three questions: is do we want to grow and scale and be the biggest agency in, Canada or your province and state, et cetera? Do you want to stay where you're at and focus on operational efficiencies and margin and profitability and, team and client happiness and the product output? Or do you want to shrink and become more specialized and uniquely focused on or two or three individual kind of core areas of expertise? And so, it sounds like you guys go through that similar kind of mindset. So I have sort of two questions. One, I'll say, think about it if you can and park it. It's like, okay, we're thinking about the new way to work, and like, I'm not here to, of course, to talk about Morphio, but a little self-leading. But what would you like to see in tools or in optimizations or things that would help change or enable your business? Is sort of that down the later on conversation or question. But the first is, so you went and did the MBA. You're a professor, running a digital agency. Are you surprised how long, you kind of alluded to this, but are you surprised how long it's taken for businesses to realize the importance of that bridge between marketing and sales and, digital tactics? Or do you think it's sort of, it's our time to kind of shine? Because ultimately everybody needs, especially now, customers. They need to understand where those customers are coming from and understand their acquisition costs. Are you sort of surprised how long it's taken for, our world to become sort of a front runner, or is that just a natural evolution? Hopefully that question's direct, but it's a bit.
Yeah, no. You know what? I think, you know, in some ways, the fact that we're still in our infancy, like this infancy's taken long, right? It's still cool because I think it does provide a little more opportunity for us from the agency level. Like if everyone was experts and everyone knew everything, then to come in and add value might not be as easy, right? So in some ways, it's okay that there's still this population of people who don't know what they're doing, and we can come and help them. So I'm okay with that. But it is, but you where it the negative side is where you have, like, let's say a company that approaches you, and like, the people at the higher up maybe are a little bit older, still set in their ways, and then you've got maybe the younger or even just more enlightened people who are like, yeah, we should really take this digital or do something. And you know you deal with the company and you might not be able to get the business because of the person at the top. So that's like very frustrating, because you would think like people would get past that already. Right? But there's still some of those challenges where we're in a larger organization where they need help, but they're still set in their old ways and they don't think that you can help them. It can get very frustrating at times.
I was just typing that question in so you can read it as I preamble again. But so I'm going back to the like millions of tabs, 100,000 tools at any given time. And as you mentioned earlier, your mindset is always to test and try, delete or pay and move on. You're one of our earliest customers, and we've used you as a sounding board for all sorts of crazy ideas. And I think you have a great understanding of where we're trying to take the platform, the business. But sort of maybe back to that question of, we know that the tool sets that agencies use is wide casting, and depending on our core areas of expertise, you're going to use something very similar. It's a hard and a very convoluted, complex, and very noisy space. So if you wanted to talk a little about maybe the things that you employ, but also where do you see that going from an evolution perspective that could help us as a product, but maybe also shed some light, as you already have done on the camera side, as well as the Acadium, in terms of how you employ these types of things within your tool set or business?
Yeah, so I think from a Morphio perspective, I think Morphio is going down the right path, from the perspective of being able to really capture in an automatic fashion everything that's going on, and particularly I would say more on the negative side, like those things that that you wouldn't have noticed, but here it's like right on top of you. I think that I think the hardest part about developing a tool is that every agency or every user kind of has their own requirements, and it's like, hey, if I could just do that one thing, it would work for me. Or if I could customize a little bit here, a little bit that way. So I think that like a tool like Morphio, my biggest advice would be, how can you make it a little bit more customizable so that it will fit my little niche thing, here or there. I think a good example as a company, not to say that that's what Morphio is or digital marketing tools, but a good example would be like Monday.com. And I don't know how much you know about Monday, but the cool thing about Monday is this is a project management software which theoretically could work for any industry. Now, I personally don't use Monday, but with certain clients and partnerships, I do. I personally don't love it, but if you look at the concept of it, like, here's something that I can customize to whatever I need, whether I'm an auto business, I'm a marketing agency, I'm a government institution, it's wonderful. Now, I'm not saying that that's what Morphio needs to be, but just that concept where, that one integration, like I do Pinterest ads or I do Pinterest marketing, and I really would love to have that. Like, the point is, it's a balance, right? How do I add this customization, make everyone feel good, in a way, if possible, make it so that they don't have to use other tools, right? So that's what my suggestion would be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to, as business owners too, we're always asking ourselves, how do we focus and how do we cut out the noise, but how do we add value to our clients or our team members? And it's probably the hardest question to each other and to yourselves, is to be accountable to, what's next. And I think that's our job, is we're in the weeds and we're doing the work, but we also have to make sure that we're, kind of casting that vision, et cetera. So so back to Optidge. I mean, maybe as we're closing out here, what's next for your business? I mean, give us a little sense of what what you guys are working on, and maybe other, if it's projects or if it's, cool processes, technology, or things that you've got on the plate. It would be good to know a little bit what's next for you guys.
Sure. I think one of our main focuses, or I'd say two focuses. One focus is just more of this concept of cross-channel strategy. So how do we better integrate our Facebook, LinkedIn, Google campaigns? Because in the end of the day, it is one ecosystem. And how do we build off of each other, right? Someone saw something in LinkedIn and then go to Google. So how do we build this funnel, not just where the person is with regards in the buying cycle or the purchasing cycle, but also, adding in the different platforms of Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, so on and so forth, and really optimizing it and making sure that we can attribute correctly, but also put them together to work better. So like if someone saw this Google ad, should we retarget them in LinkedIn, or LinkedIn, different things like that. So I think that's an area that we're focusing on, because more and more, in order to be successful in digital marketing, you can't just be, let's say, Google ads, or you just can't be LinkedIn, but often it needs to be an approach where you're using more than one platform, because different platforms reach out to different people or different stages of that people are in. That would be one area. And then I think the other area would be from an SEO perspective, which is also a large part of our business. The next big wave is specifically site speed. And Google came out most recently with warning everyone, hey, part of the Google algorithm is going to be about your site loading and how that is coming along. So just like Google before, a couple of years ago was saying mobile is where it's at, we're going to be indexing your sites based off of your mobile experience and not the desktop. They gave everyone 2-3 years to get ready for that. And like I said, some people aren't ready for that. But now from loading in general, this is going to be an important aspect for every single website. So we as an agency and companies in general really have to start thinking about, hey, what is this? Where is our website at? What can we do to make it better? And I don't know where Morphio is in this whole scheme of things, but I imagine that would be a wonderful area for you guys to build upon as well.
Yeah, we're definitely looking into further integration with Search Console and using speed as a notifier in the same way Search Console does, and help really understand and provide that context as to, where you're at. As we take a very protectionary view on things. We're actually moving more to insights, optimizations, into deeper whys and all that great stuff. But you can't be without all the new parts that come out with algorithms to say, what else should I be making sure is kept up to date? And that checklist is getting and growing, deeper and deeper. It also makes it harder based on your converse or points there on attribution about, tracking, and every time we make one incremental change, it's like you got to test the whole environment to make sure that it's working. And, customers or clients don't quite understand the complexity related around that, and it's only going to get worse. So I think that's another layer that I know you guys experience in our
No, and Eric, that's funny because I didn't even think about it that way, because part of the whole foundation of Morphio is, I'm not part, but a big part is like, okay, you did this one thing and therefore it caused this or that. But when you look, it's hard because in some ways there's that isolation, but then how can you look at everything else you're doing? And if you can kind of do both, then it would be amazing. But I can imagine in order to flesh that out from an AI perspective and scientific perspective, it can be challenging.
It is, but we're close. We're close, Danny. I can't wait to
Awesome.
show you stuff.
Well,
So
I'm excited.
I was on 2 points. They're all about you, but I pretty much like or comment as much as humanly possible without annoying you on most of the things that you're doing. So you're an influencer yourself. So I want to know where you go to ingest information. That could be both personally and professionally. And then maybe a little bit on something. I always like to know what people wouldn't know about Danny Gavin. So those are the 2 ways we're going to close off today, if that's okay.
Sure. So to ingest information, in the SEO world, Twitter is really, really hot. So like following people and influencers on Twitter really keeps a sort of like a barometer of what's going on. So that I like. LinkedIn's great also, but as much as the kind of whole mode on LinkedIn now is to sell yourself without selling yourself, I don't like that whole thing, but you kind of have to do it. And
Yeah.
we can talk about that another time, but it's just, I don't know. It's not my favorite thing. And moving on to that, I love basketball. So I'm a huge NBA fan. So I follow NBA everywhere, and I'm excited for the season to start again. One thing people don't know about me is that I am a musician, and I play music and I sing. I'm also a cantor, which is like a religious, who leads the services at like religious services. So music is also a really big part of my life, that I love to share and do as well.
Amazing. Well, next time we can do a duet customer chat. I'm terrible singing, but I'll try to keep up to it. So thanks again, Dan. I know we went a little bit over time. Always great chatting with you. Hopefully we can do it again in a few months and see where we're all at. And again, appreciate your time. Look forward to doing it again. All the best.
I love that, Eric. Thanks so much.